I literally missed out on the finals by 0.07 of a second, which was devastating.
How did that feel at the time?
I just went, oh, well, it's now or never. I was in and out of specialists for years, and I was also told that it would affect my fertility because my hormonal system and nervous system essentially shut down. I was young, so I was only 24, and they just said it would be very, very impossible, if not to A, carry, and B, conceive.
What are some of the things that you're like, this is actually just turned out to be the best thing, being pregnant at 38?
I think gratitude in it every single day. I sort of had to try and not just feel it physically, but mentally start to make the shifts that were required for me to lean into this and enjoy this.
You help people to strive to be healthy humans.
I think movement throughout pregnancy is a non-negotiable, and it can save you and it can help you. And I firsthand share that even the days you wake up and cry in the shower because you are exhausted and you are tired, things haven't gone to plan, or you just haven't slept and your hormonal system is screaming at you and you don't feel like your best self, still go and move.
And how important is that?
It will help improve your unbalanced pregnancy hormones. You're geriatric.
And so when the first time you heard the words geriatric pregnancy, how did that feel?
I feel...
You're dancing, Steph. I love that. Thank you for being here today. This is exciting.
It's so exciting. Thanks for having me, Natty.
You've been on the podcast before, but a long while ago. You probably don't even remember. But for those that haven't listened to that or that don't know you, perhaps give us a little bit of a backstory. Actually, you know how I met you? Do you remember how we met? You probably don't. You spoke at an event, and it was at I don't even know what the event was for. I don't even know how I ended up there, and I don't know the name of the venue, but it's in the city near the train lines, and it's like a glass housey type of thing. You walk.
I remember.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, she's hilarious, and I need to be her friend. And so then I don't know what I did to come and have the pleasure of being your friend, but I did something.
I thought it was we both spoke on a panel somewhere, which we have since. Yes. But I would have thought that's where we, I think, professionally have met, which has turned into a wonderful and hilarious personal friendship and relationship.
Remember you telling the story, and what was really hilarious about, your experience as an athlete and an Olympian and competing, but then whoever it was that actually won, you were like, and everyone thought it was me, but that actually wasn't me. I can't remember who that was, but it was a really funny story. So anyway, it was very captivating.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
But let's start there. So ex-Olympian, athlete, now transformed into helping other people live their best lives. But how do we give a short story of your journey?
Very much old and retired these days from sport, but spent the better part of probably 15 years of my life as a professional athlete, and then went on to compete at the 2010 Winter Olympic Games, which was obviously a huge career highlight. I was on the Australian Winter Olympic team, which is a little bit different to, I just didn't happen to be good at summer sports coming from Australia, but I went on to be a professional snowboarder, and that's, how I spent the better part of my athletic career. And I retired due to injury, which we can chat about and we'll probably touch on based on a few other things today. And that was the reason I retired. Not initially, I tried to come back, but just could never, ever get my body back in order to come back in time for the next Olympics and next sort of competition series. So that kind of led me down this huge healing, I would say, and more holistic health journey following sport, because sport is not that I would say I don't go at 110% now these days, but sport was all in, on your body, and very, very physical. And when I had my injury, I really, really had to reassess how I thought about health and healing and looking after myself. And it just led me on a completely different path to health, and then helping others, as you said, with their health, and opening my wellness business and coaching business, and now podcasting. Very similar stuff to you do, multifaceted, way of looking, I guess, at health, be it physical, mental, or emotional, I guess. And
it's all together. It's all, you can't separate it, can you?
Right. It's so connected. And I learned so much more of that on my I guess, journey following my injury, and my mind was just opened up to so many more ways of looking after yourself and how we should really explore health and find what really works for us. And
So you injured yourself at the Olympics?
no, well, I did. I had a spectacular crash at the Olympics, which was ranked number 9 in the top 10 Olympic highlights of crashes, and was played in slow motion on Eurosport for far
Great.
longer than my mother would
That's
like
just like, thanks,
to know.
guys.
I was like, I did manifest a top 10 result at the Olympics. I just wasn't specific enough with my request. So I
You've
came
got to be intentional with these things,
You've
right?
got to be so intentional.
Top 10.
And lesson learned. So I'm very, very grateful. I was still, top 20 in the world. I literally missed out on the finals by 0.07 of a second, which was devastating at the time. And top 16 go through, and I literally was in 17th position going into the finals. So,
And when you injured yourself, what did you injure?
well, that was just a small couple of ribs at
Is that like a standard thing for snowboarders?
and a minor concussion.
Just minor. That's so funny how you kind of discount, because it's just such a common thing, I'm assuming, that happens.
Yeah.
I had a patient today. She's running 100. What is it? It's not called a marathon. That's called something extra.
Oh, she's doing like an ultra marathon or a
But
something.
then she says to me,
wild.
"Oh, tomorrow I'm just running a marathon."
Oh.
It's like the same thing. Oh, just a couple of ribs.
Full respect to her, because I have no endurance. But yes, I mean, that was I was in extreme sports. I did a sport called border cross, which was an X Games sport before it was transitioned into a commercial and Olympic sport. So it's very much part of the territory to have these injuries. And for me, I really wanted to finish the season strong. I didn't get that top 10 at the Olympics that I was really hoping for. So I went into World Cup finals, which was about, I want to say 6 or so weeks later. And it was like the last race of the season, the last, few turns before the finish line, and sort of my last chance to really get my world ranking for the year. So Olympics is one event in a full season. Unfortunately, the Olympics is the only real event that people see. But for my own peace of mind, and I think I really had something to prove, which is not always great, not just to myself but to everyone else, that I had so much more in me. So I came into World Cup finals, pretty hot, and to the point where even my coach and a few people had said, it's not the end if you don't do the World Cup finals. It doesn't matter. Are you a bit burnt out? Maybe you should sit this one out.
Pushing hard.
I was pushing hard, and I did have a few broken ribs, as I mentioned, and I'd had a very big season and a big few years leading up to the Olympics, obviously pushing my body to the extremes. So long story short, the last jump before the finish line was giving people a lot of trouble. And we were all being coached as to how to go around it in the training, waiting for the snow to speed up so that we would have more speed to get over this jump. So if you imagine like a skateboard ramp, essentially, and you hit the skateboard ramp at full speed. So for women, we're going anywhere between, say, 50 and 70 kilometres an hour. You come around the turn and you want to hit this jump at full speed in order to make the gap, because there's like a big gap over once you hit the ramp, and you've got to clear a distance of, around 16 to 20 metres to then land and make the landing, which we would call the sweet spot. And at the risk of going into too much detail, I came around the last turn and just hadn't really accounted for the fact that a lot of us have been pulling off the course all morning because of the lack of speed and because of this treacherous jump, which especially for the girls, we don't have the weight that the boys have, and even they were coming up a bit short on the jump, so the girls were coming in a little scared. And I hesitated on the takeoff. I lost a bit of speed. I felt it, and instead of pulling out and going, I shouldn't go for it, in my head I'd already dedicated to hitting it, the jump, and I just went, oh well, it's now or never. And I literally got in the air and stopped. And for those who haven't heard of my injury, like my physiotherapist would explain it like falling out of a first floor building to concrete. I came up meters and meters short of the sweet spot, so I hit the flat before you even hit the transition, and the left-hand side of my body took the impact and resulted in spinal fractures, serious damage to like my L4, L5 lumbar region of my spine, serious sacrum and pelvis damage. I tore my hamstring off the bone. I broke another 4 ribs. I had serious hematomas and spinal whiplash all the way up to my neck. And amongst other things. So it was a pretty severe accident that took me off my feet for a really long time.
And then in terms of the recovery of that, what were you told? What was the prognosis at that point in time? Because I'm an empath. I just felt every part of that description. So that was fun. Thanks for that.
No, I'm so sorry.
No, but seriously, like, what was the prognosis at the time? Because I think that's also, part of the process of healing. And everyone's different with what they hear and what they do with that. And obviously strong-minded people, I think, not everybody is strong-minded. It's just the way we are. But what did they say to you?
Well said. The strong-minded person in me just wanted to be told when I could get back on snow and start competing again. The strong-minded person in me also couldn't probably hear how bad it was and struggled to communicate to others how bad it was at the time. I was stuck overseas for 2 months before I was allowed to fly back to Australia.
In hospital?
No, I wasn't in hospital the whole time, but I was bedridden.
Right.
But because we couldn't get a clear prognosis, and because I was in a foreign country and it was very hard without obviously health insurance as an athlete and getting the scans that were required and needed and finding the right doctors and specialists to see and in another language trying to communicate the pain and what had happened and the incident. So I think it was very misdiagnosed very early on, and it wasn't until I could get back to Australia a few months later, because I had hematomas, I wasn't allowed to fly, full of blood clots. So once I was cleared to fly and come back to Australia, I could get a bit of a clearer picture, and all my inflammation and swelling and the hematomas and bruising had gone down, so I could get clearer pictures, clearer x-rays. So it's very much what I told you was it was sort of the spinal fractures and lower lumbar region that I damaged and injured that was my major problem and the hardest thing to come back from and recover from. And the A-type personality and athlete in me wasn't very good at doing rehab and relaxation. And I struggled with that too. And then I was banned from the Institute of Sport until I got my head and my body better, because I was just pushing myself too much, and I just couldn't find the balance. And there was so many other things that came out of that injury, like gut issues. I'm now celiac, so like autoimmune issues. I lost so much hair, like the swelling for years did not leave my body. I was just like a little puffer fish for years. So I was in and out of specialists for years, and I was also told that it would affect my fertility because my hormonal system and nervous system essentially shut down, which affected my hormonal system. And I was young, so I was only 24, and they just said it would be very, very impossible, if not very hard, if not impossible to A, carry and B, conceive.
And how did that feel at the time? Did you want to have children? At 24, what do you really know? But I guess,
It's true. I think a lot of people maybe in their early 20s know. I didn't know. My mind was focused on sport. If I'm really honest. My mind was elsewhere. I was very dedicated. I'm very hyper-focused kind of person. So hearing it was hard.
But at the same time, maybe you were just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Least of my problems right now.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's not really what I'm thinking about. That would make it really hard to be on tour. But I was, to be really honest, I was married at the time. I was in a relationship, and so you have to communicate that obviously to your partner at the time, and that's something pretty heavy to be told, I guess, at 24. I think anything that's out of your control and not your choice is hard to hear.
Yeah,
always, even if I didn't want it. And then to be fair, from there, I think I lent into that narrative and what I was told. And for me, I just went, okay, that's fine. And I won't have children.
Right.
And I'll put my focus and my love and my attention elsewhere in life, and that's okay.
And fast forward now, you help people to, in like you said, strive to be healthy humans. But what I'm hearing is that you borrowed someone else's opinion and took it on to be your truth.
Well said.
How often do you see that happen with clients. I think that I see that all the time where patients are told you won't have children is a really classic thing for people to be told, which is heartbreaking. And I want to say to anyone that's listening, unless there is an injury that has actually severed a fallopian tube or, you know, done something that's structurally very damaging, I don't let anyone tell anyone what's possible. You know, I think that it comes down to the individual and the fight that they have in them. But I think we do this a lot. We borrow the opinion because they're the expert.
They're the expert and we listen. And at a young age, I didn't know to question that. And like you, I see it every day.
And I want to also just backtrack and say, if you were to do nothing different, that probably would be the outcome long term, right? Like if you didn't do anything to improve your health, then that would probably be the way it is. But again, we often give an opinion or a diagnosis based on where someone's currently at with no thought about how they can improve their life. You know, it's just, oh, this is where you're at and this is what the outcome, this is what the outcome is right now. But we take it as it's that way forever.
It's Bible. Yeah.
Right.
And I see people I work with in the physical space of what I do, I see a lot of and work with a lot of chronic pain management I would say is an exercise rehabilitation, I think would be where I sit in terms of part of my specialty and clinical Pilates. And I get a lot of people very similar, like you said, that come in and it might not be fertility based, but it would be body based, where they've been told by a specialist that they have to have surgery or that they will never get out of pain or that they will live in this chronic pain cycle for the rest of their lives and without drugs you'll never survive. And then I've worked with them for a year on their physical body and got them strong and strong in themselves again. And you can get out of, and amazing what you can get out of. Yeah. So I think it's very similar, and I had to learn that coming at it. We've now learnt from fertility sitting here.
Well, you know, is it a good time to tell people that you are pregnant? Because you've pretty much not hidden, you just didn't tell anyone. And in full transparency, Steph is a patient at the clinic and you were coming in at 30 weeks and going, should I start telling people now? I'm like, it's pretty obvious, babe.
Do you think I should tell people now?
Well, we're now, 36 or 37 weeks?
36 weeks.
Yeah, we're not hiding it anymore.
It's a little obvious now. To be fair, for a long time it wasn't obvious.
No, it
and
wasn't.
I didn't
You're
show
right.
for such a long time that it was almost easier just professionally to keep working and do what I did.
Right.
But as you and I know, and we've joked about a lot because I've spent a lot of time at Nat's practice throughout this whole journey, and you've had an instrumental part in this fertility and pregnancy journey, is that the minute you do open those doors, I think, or the floodgates, the pregnancy floodgates, as I like to call them, is it you do open yourself up to a lot of
right.
You know, let's say unwanted, unsolicited, and possibly unqualified opinions.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah, you're going to get everyone's opinion, and also the other, not just of what they think and how they think what you should do, but also, I don't think that there's no nice way to say this, and I don't mean it disrespectfully. You are 38, and it's also something that we talk about is age when it comes to fertility. It's like, oh, unfortunately, it's called a geriatric pregnancy at this point.
You're geriatric.
And so the first time you heard the words geriatric pregnancy, how did that feel?
I wish I laughed, but we've lauged about it.
We've laughed. We've processed it.
You know, I feel very grateful, fast forward, from obviously everything we've spoken about, but that I have been able to fall pregnant naturally at 38. But it's very, very disempowering, I think, to go to every single appointment and be referred to as a geriatric.
You're like, I get it. I know.
Yeah,
you told me last time.
I'm aware. Thank you. It's like, thanks, Dr. Peterson. Yeah. How old are you? You're about 76. Giving me the geriatric.
So, right. So your geriatric pregnancy in a body that you were told that probably couldn't have children or would have trouble conceiving and then potentially trouble maintaining a pregnancy, and then also being told that you'd be in a lot of pain. You did a lot of work, and not just with me. You've actually just done a lot of work in general in getting your body strong, your mind strong, and that's credit to you. So I'm not shocked that you actually, all of this has been, you know, without too much complication because you've done the work. But, you know, I'd love to know, what would you say to the younger self now? Look at you, like you're sitting here, you're 38 and you're 36 weeks pregnant.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it's wonderful that you've been able to change that dialogue too, like coming in and out of your clinic with you and your team. It's like, that's not how we open the conversation.
Right.
Whereas,
No, we definitely are not. We have women in our clinic that are 48 that are pregnant,
Exactly.
So it's like, I'm definitely not opening it with geriatric pregnancy. And I get that it's a medical term, or it's medically how they talk about it, but it would be nice to kind of go, yeah, I've got it now. You don't need to keep saying
and
that.
I think also, look, if you, regardless of how you got there, I think continuing to refer to it as an age bracket is really challenging. For me, what I found very early on, and would definitely contribute to the reason why I was quiet early on, or I probably didn't feel like I owed anyone the justification, and had to work through it myself because my younger self had never, ever prepared to be pregnant.
Right. And this is what I was actually just thinking. Exactly that point is that perhaps part of the reason that you actually didn't tell people is because it just wasn't necessarily something that had integrated, that you had really got your head around yet. Obviously, you're delighted, but I think that's probably part of it. It's like, I'm still adjusting to something that I told was never going to happen.
Absolutely. And then even when, so my now partner, Dave, and I had obviously spoken about kids. That was a really hard conversation for me, obviously starting life and a relationship again later in life, and having to have that conversation with someone who's really wanted kids always. And I'd never been really asked or talked about myself or talked about it, because earlier in life when I was told what I was told medically, and then I had that conversation with my then partner at the time, it was just off the table.
Right.
It was never, ever discussed again. So to then be 36, 37 and be asked how I feel about kids was, stepping into a whole new land that I just wasn't really prepared for. And then I had to be very open about the fact that I didn't know if it was possible, because that's what I still believed. So again, very grateful that, like you said, we haven't had too many complications. The biggest, I think, complication for me, going back to the geriatric thing, was when we fell pregnant naturally, and it was a huge surprise, welcomed, as you said, welcomed surprise, to then go to all these medical appointments where they're just not empowering. And there's no like, hey, congrats, what an amazing, how wonderful. Where you're like you said, like it should be something we should be excited about. And I come to your clinic and I receive that. So it's like, build your team, right? And find the people that you want to be with. It's exactly the same in sport. You have to put a team around you that's going to help you get the right outcome. And originally and initially being pushed into, say, the system and the medical system, where you're like, oh, this is happening, what do we do? And we came in very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, Dave and I, it was just it wasn't empowering, especially not for me as the female. I don't find it was like, well, because you're geriatric, here are the stats of how bad it could be.
Right.
And here's why you shouldn't tell anyone for 12 weeks. And what if this happens? And have you considered this? And we would be very careful about that. And it's just very fear-based.
Well, I guess it's setting you up for the worst case scenario, which doesn't generally happen, but it's just the way that the system is designed. Again, also, I say this all the time, and it's without risk of sounding obnoxious, but the system is actually set up to look after the people that don't care about their health, that don't invest in their fertility beforehand.
Right.
So unfortunately, we all live and use the same system, but it really is set up for the person that doesn't pay attention to those things, and that's unfortunate. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I guess otherwise we couldn't accommodate everybody, but it means that the people that are in the top 20%, really it feels very like worlds apart, because you're used to living and breathing health.
Yeah, well said. And I think, and I'm such a high achiever or high performer based on my background. You're looking for milestones. You're looking for like, what am I doing right? How can I do it better? How are we going into this? And I just felt going into it, I just wasn't receiving that. And I really struggled with that. So having, your team and the other health practitioners that I have worked with for my back and my life the last few years, and just bringing my team back together and then just focusing on that made a huge difference, because
I call it your cheer squad. And I
Your
think we
cheer
all
squad.
need our cheer squad that's like part of our health team. But your health team should be cheering you on. And if you're not getting that, perhaps we have to look at where we can actually start to bring that in. I can't tell you how many people are unhappy with their health provider but stay with them because they're too scared to leave. They're worried they'll be judged. It's like you're not getting what you need. And maybe the practitioner doesn't actually love treating you either. Like, let's be honest. It's got to be a fit both ways. So I think it's important. I think it's really important to build that cheer squad around you and that you get to design that.
I agree. It's like you're the CEO, you know, and it's like who sits on your board
Right.
plays
100%.
a huge role. But I really struggle with that. I'll be very honest, like mentally, emotionally, plus all the obviously physical changes very early on in that first, let's say, I didn't even know I was pregnant, obviously early on. So we didn't even learn until probably 6 weeks in. And then that next sort of 6 to 8 weeks was
It's very much torture.
yeah, it was. It was a
And that's,
slow.
I think for the majority of people, it's torture.
It's slow torture.
Nobody knows. You feel like rubbish.
Yeah.
You've got nothing to show for it. You're fatigued. Your boobs hurt. Like, what's good about it?
All the things. And like I said, and I like to live healthily, right? And I'm unapologetic about that.
Well, and you just feel hungover the entire time.
Yeah, it's like having the worst hangover of your life mixed with jet lag. And then you get up, and we're both in service, right? I work in the service industry, so you're with people all day long. And I found out around Christmas, the hardest time, I think, to go into like the celebratory season of, joy, and not being able to tell anyone and not being able to enjoy a drink and vomiting between teaching Pilates classes. And it was just a whole thing.
Yeah, it's so hard.
And then people are like, well, you've been really secret about it. And like, sorry, Karen, I've just been managing a few things.
Yeah, just a few things on my plate. I did love when you were first pregnant and you sent me a picture of 6 pregnancy tests and you were like, could these be wrong? And I was like, I think 6 is a sure thing. I think we're on here.
I think you sent back quite immediately saying you can get a false positive. What did you say?
You can get a false negative.
You can get a false negative. You'll never get a false positive. I was like, oh, shit.
Because again, it actually, I think it's nice to say you didn't have a lot of trouble falling pregnant because you'd done a lot of preparation. And I think that's a lovely story. But I think that was part of the, oh my goodness, this actually, I can do this. This is, it is a bit of a shock.
It was, I've lived in and with chronic pain for the last, I would say, 15 years, both medicated and unmedicated. And Chinese medicine has played a huge role in that whole picture in getting my body back. But I still think up until a couple of years ago, I lacked the confidence in my own body. Even though I work in this space and I give confidence and I believe I am a cheerleader to every client I work with about empowering them to live in their best body and enjoy the body that they have and be grateful for what we can do with our bodies. And I very much did that to get my own body back and get myself out of some pretty bad chronic pain cycles. But I still had doubt. I still had so much fear and doubt in my own body. And I was told I'd be on bed rest. That was one of the other things I was told. So for me, that's not like you don't go, whew, wow, pregnancy sounds awesome. And I'm not a bed rest kind of gal. I would struggle. Like and I mean that super respectfully, and it could still happen to me, and I know it's happened to a lot of others, but I just know personality-wise.
Right. I was on bed rest and oh my God.
Struggle.
I cried every day. And my husband would leave to go to work and he'd come back and I'd be on the same spot crying and he'd be like, have you moved all day? I'm like, A, I'm not allowed to.
Can't.
And B, no, I've just been crying because I just don't know how we're actually going to do this. Like, it was torture. I want to switch things a little bit and I want to ask you, let's look at the other side of this.
Yes.
As a 38-year-old woman, what are some of the things that you're like, this is actually just turned out to be the best thing, being pregnant at 38, rather than focusing on the geriatric side of it?
Well said. So I think we got through that first trimester, and then second trimester was like, okay, let's lean in, right? Like, how can I really adjust to this, enjoy this, find the absolute, I think, gratitude in it every single day, And then you do start to feel it, obviously. I'm not telling any woman that hasn't had a baby before anything they don't know, but I really struggled to feel it and enjoy it that first sort of trimester. So second trimester, I sort of had to try and not just feel it physically, but mentally start to make the shifts that were required for me to lean into this and enjoy this. And credit when credit's due, because Dave is just my biggest cheerleader. And I think people who know me are really shocked by the fact that I haven't been possibly more open about it or public with it or cheering from the rooftops, because it's not something I'd ever, I think, not hoped or not wanted for, but just didn't expect in my life, that I didn't have that full cheerleader approach to coming out of the gates being like, woohoo, we're pregnant. This response that I think people, and everyone's like, aren't you excited? I'm like, I am petrified. No, I'm terrified. And the athlete in me wants to do it the best I can. And I'm so hard on myself and I'm, adjusting to so much change. And I'm scared that my body wasn't going to hold up and hold me throughout it, because that's what I'd sort of been told. So I had to tap into so much of my own work and so much of the mindset work that I do with my own clients, and that chronic pain work, where it's all about coming back to empowering yourself and believing in your body and what it's capable of. And, you and I have laughed about it in many sessions. I'm constantly surprised. I am blown away by what my body physically has been able to do. Mentally, I've had some hard days.
I think every pregnant woman has hard days. I think it's just you don't feel like you're in control of anything that's happening, and it's all happening really quickly, except for those first few weeks. But you're like, what now? Like, what next? It's very, very unknown, your first pregnancy. And then the second one, you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's what happened at that point in time, But I think that's pretty normal.
The list is long and the changes are coming in hard and fast. So you just feel like you're in a washing machine.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Okay, so today we're dealing with this. But I think you nailed it on the head then. It's control. And that's something I really struggle with. I am a bit of a control freak. I'm someone who probably likes to control the outcome, but like you said, I like to control my health. And that is something I struggled with, because pulling back is challenging.
It's hard, yeah.
Self-care, which we all know and I preach and we work in that space, but it's hard, and it's hard to do, especially as a female, but especially as a pregnant female. Find the time and the space when you are adapting to so much change. And also just trying to get your head in the right place to be like, what is this going to be like? Because I had nothing to compare it to. And I'd never, ever thought, how some people want to get married their whole life, or they want to have kids their whole life, or they, see the white picket fence. Like for me, I had that in sport. Like I saw where I wanted to go in sport. I knew what I was working towards. I'd seen myself at the Olympics that many times. But for me, this has come at 38, in my, I am so grateful, because I'm in such an awesome, beautiful stage of life and relationship where it's just such an added layer and bonus to everything that we have. But I wasn't prepared.
So given that, what you can look at now is maybe that you can actually expect things to be different moving forward, because you've actually proven that. I think it's a really nice reflection. You're like, I didn't think my body could do this, or I didn't know if my body could do this. I think it's very empowering for women to hear that maybe we can actually expect good things to happen from our bodies. We can expect to have pregnancies that are not problematic. We can, if we do the groundwork, we can actually expect that, but we don't set ourselves up that way. We look at the worst.
We do, and we forget how capable we are. And the female body is unbelievable. Right. Unbelievable. And I've worked in the health space for long enough, but even to feel it myself and experience it myself is a huge gift, to really understand what we're capable of.
Well, Steph is also very capable of having epic 2-hour naps at the clinic when we treat her. Sometimes Steph says, just leave me here and shut the door.
Please,
can I move if you in? Don't need this bed in this room for the next hour, can you just leave me here? And you literally Sleeping.
There was the best one day when like you came back in and the girls were like, we're so sorry we got caught. And then we had a meeting and then a client turned up and then there was a phone call and I was like out cold, like sound asleep. No idea that I'd been left in the room for like the extra, whatever it was, half an hour, 45 minutes, unconscious. So, I am learning to wind down.
Absolutely.
Look at me, just chilling right out.
A couple more things really quickly. So throughout the pregnancy, you've continued to move your body, and that's obviously very actually important for you from a pain management perspective as well, right?
Yes.
And then after, what are the plans? Like, how quickly are you hoping to sort of get back into things and moving your body, and how important is that? I think it's important for other women to hear.
It's so important, and we've always in my business had pre and postnatal programs, and I've trained most of my clients, my pregnant clients, I should say, up until about 38 weeks. So I think movement throughout pregnancy is a non-negotiable, and it can save you and it can help you. And I firsthand share that even the days you wake up and cry in the shower because you are exhausted and you are tired and you know things haven't gone to plan, or you just haven't slept and your hormonal system is screaming at you and you don't feel like your best self, still go and move, because it will just switch your mood. It will help improve your unbalanced and irate pregnancy hormones. And have grace, because that's the biggest lesson I think for me is that I can share, is that you just, whether it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, you have to do it. And just have grace with yourself. No matter what you get through, that's okay. But you have to move your body every day. Like, it's so important for circulation and for your mental health.
It's interesting for you because you kind of can't get away with not doing it, right?
True.
So it actually it's something that everything's better when you are doing it. For other women that don't have any injury, that they've had to maintain their body in a certain way to not feel awful, so they're not under any pressure to do exercise. I love this message because it's like, just actually try it on, make some time and see how you feel.
Because even in the very early stages when I was suffering from like severe nausea and fatigue, I had to get up and teach. I was running this workshop for a few weeks over summer.
I remember you saying, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, I was
I don't know
petrified.
how I'm going to do this.
And it's like Jane Fonda, like style, leg weights, like I am up, I am down, I am jumping, I am like Sporty Spice, doing the class with the 30 plus participants. And like on my worst day, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but the movement helped.
Right.
Like getting some blood flow through my body, getting a little bit of a sweat and a little bit of movement through my body. I felt better for it. Okay, there was a few moments between classes. I wasn't my best self.
Side bombs. And, back
you
we go again.
I'll never forget my sister came to one of the classes one day, and because I normally do the whole class, I'll be really active and I'm like, yes, girls, and then turn to the left and 10 more. And I just stopped, but my voice continued. So my whole body stopped on the mat. And I was like, you're doing great, everybody. But like my body stopped, and my sister was in the front row of the class and she just looked at me and was like, oh. And she said she just saw all the colour go out of my face.
Oh, no.
And I thought I was going to pass out, but I just kept counting.
Awful feeling.
10 more, everybody. No. And she just started opening the windows. And she was like, it's so hot in here. Isn't it warm? And I was like, thank you. Thank you,
and
Annie.
a bit of a distraction. Okay, we are out of time, but I just want to know, and I'm not asking to know what the name is, but have you and Dave actually agreed on a name?
No. We are 3-4 weeks out, and I can say we have shifted so many other things that we feel so great about, and I'm coming into the next, let's say, we're putting margaritas on what the actual drop date will be, be it the next 3 weeks, be it the next 4 or 5 weeks, we don't know. But the name is something we're not quite there on, but we are prepared for game day, as we're referring to it as.
Amazing. You don't need a name to have the baby, so it's all good.
And we've got a few funny things up our sleeve, but when it comes to names, I'm very like Gwyneth Paltrow-esque. Like, I'm not going to call my kid Apple or Pineapple, but like I would say I'm that side of the spectrum Dave's a little more biblical, a little more like John and Jessica, and I go a little more left of centre. So we're not quite meeting there. So give us another month and we'll see if
And look,
it comes
you've
to
got
us.
your whole parenting career to just continue to try and decide on things. It's a good time for everyone.
We can change the name a few times, right?
I mean, here's where I come in. I go, I expect this is going to be great. And I actually said this about parenting a teenager. I'm like, it's not going to be terrible. I'm not listening to what everyone else is saying. I expect this to be great. And she's 16 and it's actually delightful so far. So I haven't got all the answers, but that's all I did. I was determined for it to be good.
I love that so much.
Thank you so much for being here today and being vulnerable and sharing with us. I think it's a very inspiring story. And
thank you for your support throughout this journey. We are so grateful.
You're very welcome.
And I highly recommend that everyone gets Nat and or her team as part of their cheer team.
Thank you.
If you are in a similar part of life to me.
Yes. Thanks, Steph. Hey there, it's Nat Kringoudis, host of the Wellness Collective podcast. I know how important it is to have a safe space for women's health, and that's why we created NK the Membership, an online sanctuary where you can access expert guidance and support right from home. Get early access to monthly masterclasses, unlimited access to our entire catalogue, and practical resources to achieve hormone harmony. Plus, enjoy a 20% discount on supplements and join my monthly live Q&A sessions. Join our community of like-minded women and wellness experts to revolutionise your health one topic at a time. Visit our website and sign up now. It's legit Netflix for hormones.